Dear listener, just imagine. Heavy rain falls upon a dark and silent forest. Thunder cracks like a beast howling in pain. Along the edge of a swollen river, a frail old woman stands alone, trapped between slippery rocks and a current that seems desperate to swallow her. Her body trembles. Her arms reach for air. Her eyes stare into the chaos of the water, silently begging for help. But no one sees. No one hears. Only the river speaks, roaring louder than her cries. And from the depths of that furious river, something stirs. Something ancient. Something massive. With golden scales and glowing blue eyes. It rises without a sound. What happened next would change not only one life, but the fate of an entire village. But before we dive into the story, please support this channel by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Your support means so much and keeps us motivated to share more thrilling stories. And truly, thank you to everyone who has already supported us. You are a vital part of this journey. Also, do not forget to check in through the comments. Let us know where you are listening from, so we can see how far our stories have traveled. Now let us begin the story. Far away from the cities, hidden deep within a forest thick with vines and fog, there was a small village. And at the edge of that village, in a fragile bamboo hut by the riverbank, lived an old woman named Grandmother Tijah. She was over 70 years old. Her hair was white as ash, her back hunched like a branch bent by the wind, and her steps slow like the rhythm of rain tapping gently on leaves. Yet, every morning before the sun rose, Grandmother Tijah could be seen walking slowly to the river, carrying an empty basket on her back. No one really knew how she survived. Her husband had died long ago. Her children had left, vanishing into the cities, never sending word. Neighbors pitied her from afar, but few ever came close. She lived entirely alone. Her world was silence and river mist. But that river, it was no ordinary river. The villagers called it the Watcher's River. Wide and wild, its green-black waters hid more than fish. They said an ancient creature lived deep below, a guardian of the forest and the flow. There were rules. Never speak loudly near the water. Never pollute it. Never take more than one fish. Most villagers had forgotten. But Grandmother Tijah, she remembered. Every day she sat upon a large stone near the riverbank. Sometimes she washed her aching feet. Sometimes she just stared, speaking softly to the river as if it were a friend. Water. Only you listen. Everyone else has forgotten me. No reply ever came. But strangely, whenever she finished, the river would seem to quiet. One afternoon the sky changed suddenly. Dark clouds crept in from the forest like a warning. The wind grew strong. The birds went silent. But Grandmother Tijah stayed. She was washing forest roots by the river's edge. Her fingers were numb. Her heart felt uneasy. Something in the air was wrong. Then lightning struck in the distance. The rain came hard and wild. She stood up, ready to go home. But her foot slipped. Forgive me, Aloe. She fell into the river. The cold water grabbed her instantly. She struggled, her body too weak. The basket on her back vanished downstream. Her old shawl floated away. She screamed, but the river roared louder. She was pulled under. Her head struck a stone. Blood mixed with the rain. Her eyes fluttered. Her arms gave up. She was drowning. But deep, far beneath her sinking body, a pair of eyes opened. Blue, bright, live. Golden scales shimmered in the darkness. Massive shape moved. Slow at first, then faster, swimming upward with power beyond imagination. Cut through the current like a knife through silk. The current stopped. Just for a moment. Dear listener, as the sky lit up with lightning and the rain turned the forest to chaos, the creature emerged. A fish larger than any boat, with eyes full of knowing. It reached her, lifted her, held her gently above the water. Rain fell, but none touched her skin. The air around her was warm, soft. She opened her eyes, half conscious, and in that moment she saw something impossible. Her husband's face, smiling, standing beside the creature. But could it be real? The fish turned, the river parted, and with the old woman resting safely on its back, it moved quietly toward the untouched forest where no human had ever dared go. That night the village stayed quiet. They assumed she was gone. Just another old leaf swept away by the flood. But they were wrong. They were all wrong. A strange warmth surrounded Grandmother Tijah's body, even as rain still poured heavily around her. Her back no longer ached. Her arms felt light. And though she had just been drowning, she could breathe. The river below her was calm, gliding gently between glowing stones and trees with roots that touched the water like fingers offering prayer. The giant fish beneath her swam with grace, each movement so silent it felt like the world had stopped making noise. She was not sure if she was alive or dreaming. Her hand reached out to touch the fish's golden scales. They pulsed gently, like the rhythm of a beating heart. Then, in a whisper that seemed to rise from the water itself, she heard a voice. "You are not yet meant to cross." Grandmother Tijah gasped. She tried to sit up, but the fish moved slightly, and somehow that single gesture calmed her again. The voice continued, deep and ancient. "Rest. You are safe now." The river narrowed, and the trees on both sides grew taller, darker. Strange birds flew between the branches. The air smelled of flowers that hadn't bloomed in generations. And soon, the fish swam into a place where even the wind held its breath. A hidden lagoon. The fish rose gently until its back was just above the water, allowing Grandmother Tijah to step onto a flat stone surrounded by glowing moss. She trembled as she stood, not from fear, but from something she had not felt in years. Wonder. Her knees almost gave out. She sat and looked around. Fireflies danced in silence. The water shimmered with soft light. The trees around the lagoon curved toward the center as if protecting this sacred place from the outside world. Then once more the fish spoke, not with words but through her heart. "You carry sorrow too heavy for one soul." Her eyes filled with tears, not from pain but from recognition. Something had seen her, understood her. "My children, they left me," she whispered. "My husband died and I stayed, waited, prayed. Every day." The water rippled, and from the far edge of the lagoon, a second creature appeared. Not as large as the fish, but shaped like a turtle with markings like the moon. It blinked slowly at Grandmother Tijah, then nodded once. Behind it, dozens of tiny orbs floated like stars. "Your pain is known here," the voice returned. "But your story is not over." She held her chest, overwhelmed. For so long she had lived with silence. Now the silence spoke back. Then came the sound of cracking wood. Far away beyond the trees, something crashed violently. The fish's head turned. The turtle slipped beneath the water. The fireflies vanished. Something was coming. The fish turned back to her, its eye glowing with urgency. "Do not fear. But do not forget." The light around the lagoon faded. Grandmother Tijah felt herself being lifted again, but this time not by water, by wind. She opened her eyes once more and found herself lying on the riverbank, back in her village. Her clothes damp, her hands scraped, but her heart still beating. The storm had passed. Above her, the clouds had broken apart. Morning light began to stretch over the land. Villagers were gathering nearby, staring in disbelief. A young man, one of the fishermen, ran toward her and shouted, "She's alive! Grandmother Tijah is alive!" Crowd rushed in. Some knelt beside her. Others whispered prayers. She looked at them with tired eyes, unsure of what to say. Someone handed her a warm blanket. Another brought water. And yet, despite the sudden attention, she felt distant, as if she had left something behind in that hidden forest. Something unfinished. Later that night, when the crowd had gone and the hut grew quiet, Grandmother Tijah sat by the window, watching the river in silence. The memory of the fish, its voice, its eyes, haunted her like a song she couldn't forget. Then she heard it again. A whisper. "Come back. When the moon turns red." Her heart raced. Outside, the river looked normal. But she knew better now. Beneath that surface, a world waited. Not only to protect her but to test her. She didn't know why she had been saved. Not yet. But she would find out. Because something was coming. Something bigger than a storm. Something that would make the entire village tremble. And Grandmother Tijah was no longer just an old woman waiting to die. She was the only one who had heard the voice of the river. And the river was not done with her. The village returned to its rhythm, as if the storm had never come. Children played again by the river, barefoot and loud, throwing stones into the shallow pools. Men patched their boats and cast their nets with laughter. Women dried cassava under the sun, trading stories about the rain. But Grandmother Tijah knew something had shifted. Each morning, she woke before the rooster called. Her bones felt stiffer now, her eyes sharper. She kept glancing at the river like it might speak again. And every time the wind passed through the bamboo walls of her hut, she listened for a whisper. Yet none came. 3 days had passed since the voice told her to return when the moon turned red. And though the sky remained clear, her heart carried weight. Not just memory but warning. One afternoon, as she sat weaving a torn basket, a figure approached her door. It was a young girl named Sari, barely 12, with tangled hair and a shy gaze. She lived with her uncle near the forest's edge. Sari rarely spoke to anyone, but now, her tiny hands gripped something tightly under her shawl. "Grandmother Tijah," she said softly. May I come inside?" The old woman nodded. Sari stepped forward, then pulled a small object from beneath her shawl, a wooden carving of a fish. Its eyes were painted blue. Grandmother Tijah's hands froze. "Where did you get that?" she asked. I didn't make it," the girl whispered. "I found it outside my window. This morning." Tijah reached out and took the carving. The wood was smooth, fresh. No villager could have carved this in one night. She turned it over and found something scratched into the bottom. Circle. Inside it, a wave. Beneath the wave, 3 dots. The symbol was not human. Not from the village. She was certain of that. Then Sari leaned closer. Her voice trembled. "Last night, I saw something in the river." Tijah's breath caught. "A fish?" she asked. Sari shook her head. "No, man. Standing on the water." The air inside the hut grew cold. Grandmother Tijah wrapped the girl in her old shawl and locked the door. "Did you tell anyone?" "No." "Good. Do not speak of it again." "Not yet." The old woman lit an oil lamp and placed the carving beside it. The flame flickered strangely, casting a moving shadow on the wall, one that looked like the fish, twisting in motion. Later that night, when the village fell asleep and the cicadas screamed from the trees, Grandmother Tijah returned to the river. The moon was still pale, not yet red, but her feet moved without fear. She sat by the stone where she used to wash her roots. The same stone she slipped from days ago. Her fingers touched the surface. It was dry. The water below her was still. Then she whispered softly, "I know you're watching. I haven't forgotten." For a long time there was nothing. Only the rustle of bamboo leaves and the slow hum of the river. Then the surface broke. A single bubble rose. Then another. The water moved in a slow, wide circle. And from the depths something glowed. She stood. The light rose higher, brighter. But it did not break the surface. Instead it hovered just beneath, waiting. Tijah knelt and whispered again. "Why me? Why show me what no one else sees?" The answer came not in words, but in images. Flashes behind her eyes. Fire. Child scream. Broken bridge. And blood flowing through the river, thick and black. She fell back gasping. "No. Not here. Not this village." The images returned. Men with axes. Tree collapsing. A wound carved into the earth. The golden fish. Wounded. Pain. Dragged away. Her heart pounded. She understood now. Something was coming to the river. Not natural. Not of the forest. People would come with machines and greed. The balance would be broken. And the guardian would be taken. She clutched her chest. The voice returned, soft and strained. "You must protect the flow." "But how?" she whispered. "I'm just an old woman." The voice replied. "You are the last one who listens." That night she didn't sleep. She sat by the river until the first light touched the leaves. Her fingers dug into the soil. Her eyes burned with purpose. She had buried her strength for too long. Now she would dig it up. Because the river had chosen her. And the river never chose by mistake. The days crawled forward, hot and windless. Even the birds had gone quiet. The river, once lively with its dance of ripples and dragonflies, now moved heavy and slow like it carried secrets too great to share. Grandmother Tijah barely spoke to the others. Her eyes often scanned the horizon. Her ears tuned to the sound of machines in the far distance. And then on the seventh night the moon rose, deep red like a wound in the sky. She was already waiting by the riverbank, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, her fingers clutching the carved fish Sari had brought. The whole village slept behind her, unaware. But Grandmother Tijah knew. The moment had come. The water began to stir. From beneath the surface, a glow pulsed, soft at first, then stronger like a heartbeat. The reeds bent gently toward the middle of the river. Fireflies rose from the trees, circling high into the air. And then, without a sound, the golden fish emerged. But it was not alone. Beside it rose another shape, tall and strange, like a man made of mist and bone. Its body shimmered with shifting colors, its face hidden behind a mask of smooth, bark-like wood. And though it never moved its mouth, its voice thundered through her soul. "You waited. You returned." Grandmother Tijah stepped forward. "You showed me what is coming. I saw the trees fall. I saw the blood in the water. Tell me what to do." The figure lifted one arm, and suddenly, the river split down the middle. A narrow path of stones rose from beneath, glowing faintly. Tijah's heart pounded. She took a deep breath and stepped onto the first stone. One by one she walked forward, into the very heart of the river. The air changed, cooler, thicker. Every step seemed to pull her into a different time. Shadows danced around her, not evil, but ancient. She could feel the memory of this river in her bones. Centuries of songs, cries, and prayers all carried through its current. Then she reached the center, where the fish waited. It lowered its head, and once again she touched its scales. This time she felt pain. Pain. The guardian was growing weaker. The spirit beside the fish raised its other arm, and an image shimmered in the air before her. Vision. Loggers. Fences. Fires. A new road carved straight through the forest, cutting the river's body like a wound. The villagers were running, screaming, and in the center of it all, the golden fish dragged onto land, gasping for air as its scales turned dull. Grandmother Tijah staggered back. "Stop it, please." The vision faded. "You asked to know," the spirit said. "Now you must choose." "Choose what? To forget, or to fight?" Her voice trembled. "I don't have power. I'm no one." But the spirit stepped closer, and its bark-like mask split open, revealing a face made entirely of light. And in that light, she saw something that stole her breath. She saw herself, not as an old woman, but as a child, barefoot by this same river, singing lullabies her mother had taught her. She saw herself as a young wife, bathing her baby in the stream. She saw her husband's laugh, echoing across the water. She saw every part of her life, tied to this river like threads in a sacred cloth. And she knew. She was never no one. The river had shaped her as much as she had shaped it. And now it needed her. The guardian fish lowered its massive eye to hers. "There is a name the forest gave you long ago," the spirit said. "Do you remember it?" She closed her eyes. And in the silence, the name rose within her like fire. Penjaga Aruz, the keeper of the flow. The river pulsed around her. "Then rise, Penjaga Aruz," the spirit said. "For the red moon will not pass without blood." Suddenly, the water rushed up, swallowing her in light. When she opened her eyes again, she was back at the riverbank. But something had changed. Her hands burned with warmth. Her breath felt deeper. Her skin glowed faintly in the moonlight. And around her neck, where nothing had hung before, now dangled a pendant made from river stone and gold thread. She looked down at her hands. The carved fish was gone. Instead, the river whispered, "They're coming." And far beyond the trees, beyond the hills, she heard the first low growl of machines, the sound of engines, hungry and cold. But she did not tremble. The keeper had awakened, and the fight for the river was about to begin. It began with the trembling of the earth. Not an earthquake, but the kind of shaking that made animals scatter and birds take to the sky in silence. Grandmother Tijah stood at the edge of the river as dawn broke, staring across the treetops. A cloud of dust rose from the distance, marking their arrival. The machines had come. 3 large excavators and 2 trucks, painted bright yellow, pushed their way into the forest with growling engines and smoking exhausts. Men with hard hats and thick boots shouted instructions and laughed, as if the forest were nothing more than an obstacle in their path. Villagers gathered slowly, confusion on their faces. Some whispered rumors about a new bridge, a shortcut to the main road, promises of jobs and money. Others said nothing, just stared with furrowed brows and heavy hearts. None of them truly understood what had been set in motion. Only Grandmother Tijah knew. She did not go to the crowd. She walked alone into the trees, her feet knowing every root and bend. Her pendant pulsed with a faint warmth, guiding her. At the old banyan tree, she knelt and placed her hands on the soil. "Show me," she whispered. The earth trembled again, and her vision blurred. Suddenly she stood within the spirit realm, the forest darker here, more alive, the trees watching her with unseen eyes. The golden fish swam through the air beside her, its body wrapped in mist. Around them, spirits of fallen trees wept silently, their arms reaching up like broken branches. "Tell me what to do," she said. But no answer came. Instead, the forest showed her a memory. It was her village. Many years ago, a group of men had once tried to cut into the hills, chasing tin buried deep under the rocks. The river had risen that year, swallowing their tools and washing them away. One man had drowned, another gone mad. She remembered now. That had been the last time anyone dared touch the land so deeply. Until today. She blinked, and the vision faded. The banyan tree rustled, though there was no wind. She knew what she had to do. By midday, she stood at the front of the gathered villagers. The trucks had stopped just outside the edge of the sacred river bend. A man with a clipboard and sunglasses stepped forward, calling out names, reading plans. "We're building progress," he shouted. "You'll thank us later." "No," Grandmother Tijah said, her voice low but steady. The man turned. "This is not your land to decide," he said. "It is not yours to destroy," she replied. A few villagers looked uneasy. Some nodded unsure. Others frowned. The man laughed. "Old woman, do not stand in the way of change." She took a step forward. "This forest breathes. This river lives. And you will not tear out its heart." The man rolled his eyes. He signaled to a driver who turned on the excavator. The giant metal arm groaned, swinging toward the first line of trees. Then it happened. The ground beneath the machine cracked. Without warning, a root burst from the soil, thick as a man's torso, wrapping itself around the excavator's track. The machine lurched, tilted sideways, and then the engine died. The villagers gasped. The man stepped back, shouting, What was that?" Tijah did not answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the river. The water had begun to rise. Not flooding. Not violent. Just lifting higher and higher, defying the usual rhythm. And in the center of the current, a ripple formed, a shape. The golden fish. Its eyes met hers. Then it dove. The current surged. A loud crack split the air. The nearest tree fell, but not toward the village. It crashed onto the road the machines had made, blocking their path. Birds exploded from the canopy, screaming as they fled. Then silence. Tijah turned slowly toward the villagers. "You must choose," she said. "Do you stand with life, or with the ones who kill it?" A boy stepped forward. Sari's older brother, Wyra. "I saw the fish too," he said. "That night when the moon was red." A woman followed. Then another man. One by one hands rose. Quiet voices spoke. They had seen the signs. They had heard the whispers. Tijah had not been alone all this time. The forest had been calling to many. And now they were listening. But the man with the clipboard cursed and stepped back toward his truck. "This is madness. We'll return with more men. More machines." Tijah stared at him. The pendant around her neck flashed, a brief glint of fire and water mixed together. "You may come," she said softly. "But the forest remembers. And it defends its own." That night, the village held no feast. No laughter. Only a heavy silence as they watched the stars and listened to the river's breathing. The fight had begun. But the worst was still to come. A cold wind swept through the village. It was not the kind of wind that carried rain or soothed tired skin. It was dry, bitter. And it came from the direction of the hills, where the machines had retreated for a while, only to return with greater force. That night, not even the crickets dared to sing. The torches around the village flickered uneasily, as if struggling to remain alive. Grandmother Tijah sat alone by the riverbank, her knees folded beneath her, eyes heavy with what she knew was coming. The golden fish had not returned in 3 days. Even the pendant around her neck had gone cold. The spirits were quiet. And quiet could mean only one thing. The balance was shifting. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from the woods. Then another. Then the sky lit up, not with stars but with fire. Orange and red flames danced above the treetops. Someone screamed. Then came the engines. 5 new trucks rolled into the forest, carrying more machines, more men, more steel teeth to bite into the earth. And behind them came another vehicle, a black one with tinted windows and men in military boots. Their presence silenced any protest. The villagers gathered, panic rising in their voices. Some shouted to stop the trucks. Others clutched their children and fled toward the hills. But Grandmother Tijah did not move. She stood slowly, her breath shaky. Then she spoke, not loud, but clear enough for those around her to hear. This night will not pass like the others. Tonight the river will cry. She stepped toward the edge of the forest, barefoot. Every root, every stone welcomed her touch. As she moved, the wind picked up. The trees groaned. Somewhere deep beneath the earth, the rhythm of the land began to beat faster. And then she saw it. A trench, newly dug, already filled with oil and trash, slicing across a slope and bleeding into a smaller stream that once fed into the sacred river. She dropped to her knees. The water was turning black. Her eyes filled with tears. The forest was dying. The golden fish had once said the red moon would not pass without blood. Perhaps it meant this night. She dipped her hands into the oily stream, closing her eyes. Her body swayed slightly, as if caught in some invisible tide. And then, without warning, she let out a single guttural cry that rang out through the trees. The sound was not human. It was ancient, echoing with pain that belonged not just to her, but to the river itself. Birds shot from the canopy. Animals ran in all directions. And then silence. Complete silence. Until the water moved. From the river's heart, a strange mist began to rise, thick, silvery, and glowing. It curled around the trunks, slid between branches, and wrapped itself around Grandmother Tijah's body like a cloak. Her pendant pulsed once more. And from the mist, the golden fish emerged. But it was no longer golden. Its scales had turned dark. Its eyes glowed not with light, but with fire. It was larger too, twice the size, thrashing through the air above the water, its body surrounded by a storm of wind and sound. The soldiers turned. They saw it, and they opened fire. Bullets tore through the trees. Sparks exploded from machinery. The villagers screamed. But the fish did not retreat. It lunged forward, a wall of water rising with it, and crashed into the machines like a flood. Metal twisted. Tires burst. The trench overflowed, sending a wave of black water surging backward into the very hands that had dug it. Tijah raised her arms. Her voice broke through the chaos. This land remembers. This river defends. The forest answered. Roots broke through the soil, dragging machines down. Vines twisted around gun barrels, yanking them into the underbrush. One of the trucks exploded, sending flaming debris into the sky like fireworks. And then it rained. Not gently. A torrential downpour, falling in sheets so heavy that the fire died in minutes. Smoke rose in swirling trails. The black water cleared. The river fought back. The golden fish hovered above the water, its body pulsing. It looked at Tijah, and she knew. This was not victory. This was only a warning. More would come. Stronger, crueler. And the river could not fight alone. As the mist began to fade, the fish slowly descended back into the current. The wind eased. The animals returned to the trees. The villagers stood silently, soaked, breathless. A child approached Tijah. "Is it over?" She looked at the child. And for the first time in many years she lied. "Yes," she whispered. "For tonight." But as she turned back to the river, her eyes caught something among the reeds. A mark burned into the soil, not made by nature, but by hands of power. Symbol. And the war was only beginning. The rain had stopped, but its memory lingered in every leaf, every puddle, and every breath the villagers took the next morning. The air felt heavy, as if the forest itself had been crying all night and had not yet found peace. Grandmother Tijah sat at the edge of the river, her hands resting on her knees. Her eyes were fixed on the water's surface, which had returned to its calm state. The golden fish had not appeared since the night of fire and flood. And that silence troubled her more than anything. Beside her, young Wyra crouched, his face pale but curious. "Grandmother," he asked softly, "what is that symbol on the ground near the reeds? The one that looked like a claw wrapped in thorns." She didn't answer immediately. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small scroll, old and brittle. Carefully she unrolled it. The parchment bore the same symbol, dark ink on faded paper, drawn with trembling hands. "It's called the Seal of Amparga," she said finally. "A sign that something ancient has been awakened. Something that should never have been touched." Wyra's brows furrowed. "Like the fish." She shook her head. "Worse." The villagers had started gathering again, whispers moving like insects among them. Some blamed the machines. Others feared the wrath of the golden fish. But there were few who remembered the stories told by their grandparents. Stories of a time when the river was not just water but a path between worlds. A place where curses could be buried. Or unearthed. That afternoon, a strange scent began to rise from the forest. Not the smell of wet leaves or moss, but of rot. Like something deep underground had been disturbed. Chickens refused to feed. Dogs whimpered and dug holes in the earth as if trying to hide. Grandmother Tijah felt it in her bones. It was coming. She called for the village elders, those who still remembered the language of the old ways. Together they lit incense made from dried herbs, and recited prayers passed down by mouth, never written. But even as they prayed, the smoke twisted unnaturally, forming shapes that no one dared to name. Then, without warning, the ground near the edge of the forest cracked. Hole opened, and from it rose a smell so vile it made several people vomit. But more than that, it was the sound, low groan, like the earth itself was exhaling pain. From the hole came a black mist, crawling like a living thing. And in the mist stood a figure. First it looked human. But its limbs were too long, its head too narrow, and its eyes. There were no eyes. Just hollow sockets dripping with thick, dark tears. Its skin was cracked like dry soil, and it wore robes that moved even though there was no wind. The villagers screamed and fled. But Grandmother Tijah did not move. She stepped forward, her pendant glowing softly. "What are you?" she asked. The creature tilted its head. Its voice was not a sound but a feeling, a vibration in the air that scraped against the mind. "I am what they buried," it said. "I am what they tried to forget." She narrowed her eyes. "This forest is not yours." The figure laughed, a sound that split the air like a blade. "This forest was mine before your kind ever spoke its name." And then it vanished, sucked back into the ground like mist down a drain. The hole closed. But the damage had been done. That night many fell sick. Not with fever or wounds, but with something stranger. They stopped speaking. Their eyes turned glassy. They stared at nothing, not blinking for hours. Even young Sari, Wyra's little sister, began to speak in her sleep. She whispered words in a language no one understood. Her fingers traced the symbol of Amparga in the dirt beside her bed. Grandmother Tijah knew they were being poisoned, not by food or air but by presence. The curse had awakened. It had tasted fear. And it would spread. She gathered the remaining elders, and together they descended into the old catacombs beneath the hills, the place where the founders of the village had once sealed the knowledge too dangerous to be kept above ground. As they walked deeper, the walls began to pulse. Moss glowed faintly. Roots crept along the ceiling like veins. And in the lowest chamber, they found what they feared most. Second seal. Broken. The chamber reeked of old blood and sulfur. Bones lay scattered in a circle, their edges burnt black. And at the center was a bowl, carved from stone, filled with thick red liquid that had not dried despite its age. Tijah knelt beside it. She did not touch it. "I need to speak to the fish," she whispered. But the water had gone silent. Not even a ripple. She placed her hand on the floor and called out, not with words but with memory. She poured her grief into the earth, remembering every child she had seen born, every tree she had planted, every sacrifice made to keep this land alive. And slowly, a warmth returned. A thin thread of golden light slipped through a crack in the ceiling and lit the bowl. The liquid hissed and bubbled. Then the sound of water running filled the chamber. The golden fish appeared. Not in body but in light. Its shape formed above the bowl, shimmering, delicate, but unmistakably alive. "I cannot protect you alone," it said. Tijah bowed her head. "Then tell me how." The fish swam in circles, then stopped. "You must go to the source," it said. "To the place where the river was born. Where the curse first touched the land." She closed her eyes. She knew that place. The forbidden cave beyond the Black Falls. A place no one had entered for 70 years. Because the last one who did never returned. As she left the catacombs, the wind outside was no longer cold. It was hot, thick, and smelled of ash. Smoke rose again beyond the hills. The machines were back. And so was the curse. But this time, the battle would not be fought with roots and water alone. It would be fought with truth. And sacrifice. The Black Falls roared like a beast in agony, thundering into the chasm below with a force that shook the very stones around it. Mist clung to the trees like a ghostly curtain, and the sky above was a dull gray, thick with the scent of scorched earth and something far more ancient. Grandmother Tijah stood at the edge of the cliff, her cane trembling in her grip, not from age, but from the weight of what she was about to do. Wyra stood beside her, silent, pale, but refusing to leave her side. "You don't have to go in there," he whispered. His voice barely heard above the roar of the falls. "I do," she replied, her eyes fixed on the dark hole behind the cascade. "This curse didn't begin in the village. It began here. And if it is to end, it must end where it was born." Without another word, she stepped forward, letting the freezing water of the Black Falls drench her shawl and skin as she passed through it. Behind the curtain of water lay the entrance, tall, narrow, and shaped like the mouth of a scream. The air inside was so cold it felt like 1,000 needles against her skin, but she pressed forward. Inside, the light faded quickly. The walls of the cave were smooth, almost glass-like, and pulsed with a faint red glow. It was not warm, not inviting. Felt like being inside a wound. Wyra followed, his torch flickering in the damp air. They walked in silence for what felt like an hour. Then, the passage opened into a vast chamber, and what they saw made them both stop in horror. Lake. But not of water. It was a lake of blood. Silent. perfectly reflective like a mirror of red glass. At its center stood a stone altar, and on it, a skeleton sat slumped forward, bound in thick chains that had melted into the bones. Its jaw was open in a silent scream. Wira stepped back. "What is this?" Tijah did not answer right away. She stepped closer to the edge of the lake. Her reflection stared back at her, aged, worn, but still burning with purpose. "This is the source," she finally said. "This is where the first offering was made to stop the ancient hunger of the land." She pointed to the skeleton. That was the first guardian, the one who gave himself to bind the curse. Suddenly the chains clattered. Wira yelped and raised his torch. The skeleton moved. Its jaw creaked open wider, and a voice echoed from the walls, not from the bones but from the cave itself. "Another must take the place. The seal is broken. The hunger returns." Then from the lake rose a shape. The golden fish. But it was no longer golden. Its scales were blackened, its body larger than ever, its eyes burning with sorrow and fury. It swam through the blood without making a ripple and circled the altar. "Tijah," it said, "you called me here. But you must understand. I am not only a guardian. I am also a prisoner." She stepped closer to the edge. "Then tell me what must be done." The fish stopped. "The curse began with a betrayal. A man who offered power to the land, in exchange for eternal harvest. But that man broke the pact. He took without giving. And so the river turned red, and the forest began to rot." Tijah clenched her fists. "Then we must restore the balance." The fish nodded. "To do so, one must become the guardian. One must bind the curse to their soul, forever." Wira stepped forward. "No. There has to be another way." "There is none," the fish said. "This is not punishment. It is purpose. Only one with a heart wide enough to carry all the sorrow of the land can do it." Tijah looked at her grandson. He shook his head, tears welling in his eyes. "You've given everything. You can't give this too." She smiled softly. "My dear Wira, Allah gave me a long life for a reason. Maybe this is it." She turned back to the lake and stepped into the blood. But instead of sinking, she walked on the surface as if it were solid. The fish circled her, gently, reverently. As she reached the altar, the chains rose, glowing. She climbed upon the stone, her body light as a feather. The skeleton crumbled into ash. The chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles, not cruelly, but like a final embrace. And then the light filled the chamber. It was not red. It was gold. The lake began to churn. The walls of the cave pulsed brighter and brighter, until Wira had to shield his eyes. Then silence. When he looked up again, the altar was empty. The chains were gone. And the lake had turned to clear water. Outside the cave, the black falls began to sparkle. The river ran clean. The forest lifted its head like a sleeper waking from a long nightmare. In the village, those who were sick began to stir. Their eyes cleared. Their minds returned. The machines beyond the hills had broken down one by one, as if nature itself had whispered, "No more." But Wira. He stood at the mouth of the cave, silent. He did not weep. He simply placed his hand over his heart and whispered a prayer to Allah, for the grandmother who had saved them all. And deep beneath the roots of the land, the golden fish swam once more, no longer cursed, no longer a prisoner, but a guardian, watching, waiting, and protecting. Because as long as one heart still remembered her name, the curse could never return. And Grandmother Tijah's name would never be forgotten. Dear listeners, from the long and emotional journey of Grandmother Tijah and the giant guardian fish, we learn about sincerity, bravery, and selfless sacrifice. An old woman, fragile in body but strong in spirit, dared to stand against greed, darkness, and a terrible curse, not just for her family, but to save an entire village and the dying forest around them. The lesson we can take is that in life, we are often faced with difficult choices. Sometimes we are called to give when we feel we have nothing left. But it is in those selfless sacrifices, born from love and kindness, that we often find the greatest strength, the power to heal what seemed impossible. We are also reminded that nature is not lifeless. It breathes, it feels, and it responds. When we harm it with greed, it suffers. But when we treat it with care and respect, nature can give back more beauty and peace than we ever imagined. This story is entirely fictional. It is crafted to feel real, not to mislead, but to inspire and motivate, to touch hearts and stir the soul. It reminds us that even those who seem small or weak can become heroes when they act with courage and compassion. Thank you so much for following this story until the end. If you found meaning, inspiration, or emotion in this story, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support means a lot and gives us the spirit to continue sharing meaningful stories with you. Also, let us know in the comments where you're listening from, and what message touched your heart the most from Grandmother Tijah's journey. See you in the next story.